Hi everybody, we're going to pick up with Pinocchio. We are on chapter 8. So, chapter 8. Geppetto makes Pinocchio new feet and sells his own coat to buy him a primer. As soon as the marionette had satisfied his hunger, he began to cry and grumble because he wanted new feet. But Geppetto, in order to punish him for all his naughtiness, let him cry and complain for half a day. Then he said, "Why should I make you new feet? So you may escape from home again?" "I promise," said the marionette, sobbing, "that from now on I'll be good." "All children, when they want something, tell the same story," replied Geppetto. "I promise to go to school and study and do my best as a good boy should." "All children, when they want something, say the same thing." "But I'm not like other children. I'm better than all of them, and I always tell the truth. I promise you, Daddy, that I shall learn a trade and be the staff and comfort of your old age." Geppetto, Geppetto tried to look very severe, but his eyes were full of tears, and his heart was full of sadness when he saw his poor Pinocchio in such a dreadful state. He did not say another word, but taking his tools and two little pieces of seasoned wood, he set to work as hard as he could. In less than an hour, the feet were ready. Two well-shaped, nimble, swift little feet that might have been carved by a great artist. Then Geppetto said to Pinocchio, "Shut your eyes and go to sleep." Pinocchio shut his eyes and pretended to be asleep, and while he did so, Geppetto, with some glue melted in an eggshell, fastened the feet in place, and he did it so neatly that no one could even see where they were joined together. As soon as Pinocchio discovered he had his feet again, he jumped down from the table where he was lying and began to gambol and dance around the room, nearly mad with joy. "Now, to prove to you how grateful I am," said Pinocchio to his father, "I want to go to school at once." "What a good boy!" "But if I'm going to school, I must have some clothes." Geppetto, who was poor and had not a farthing in his pocket, made Pinocchio a suit out of flowered paper, a pair of shoes out of bark from a tree, and a cap out of bread. Pinocchio ran to look at himself in a basin of water, and he was so pleased with himself that he said, as he strutted about, "I look exactly like a gentleman." "Yes, indeed," answered Geppetto. "But remember, it is not fine clothes that make a gentleman, but clean clothes." "By the way, speaking of school," added Pinocchio, "there's still something I must have, the most necessary of all." "And what is that?" "I have no primer." "That's right, but how shall I get one?" "That's easy. Go to the bookseller and buy one." "And the money?" "I haven't any." "Neither have I," added the old man sadly. Pinocchio, although he was usually very cheerful, became sad too, for poverty, when it is real poverty, destroys all joy, even in children. "Wait!" Geppetto cried suddenly, and jumping up, he put on his old coat, full of holes and patches, and ran out of the shop. In a little while he was back again, with a primer in his hand for Pinocchio, but the poor man was in his shirt sleeves, and it was snowing outside. "Where is your coat, Daddy?" "I have sold it." "Why did you sell it?" "Because it made me too warm." Pinocchio understood this answer instantly, and he was so overcome by feelings of his good heart that he threw his arms around Geppetto's neck and kissed him again and again. Chapter 9. Pinocchio sells his primer that he may go and see the marionettes. When it stopped snowing, Pinocchio started for school, with his fine new primer under his arm. On the way, he never stopped imagining all sorts of fine plans, and he built 1,000 castles in the air, each one more beautiful than the other. He began by saying to himself, "At school today I shall learn to read in no time. Tomorrow I shall learn to write. And the day after tomorrow I shall learn all the figures. Then I shall be clever enough to earn lots of money. And with the very first money I get, I shall buy my father the nicest, newest cloth coat." But why cloth? "It shall be made of gold and silver with diamond buttons. That poor man really deserves it. For that I should be a learned man. He sold his coat to buy me a book, and in this cold weather too. Only fathers make such sacrifices." While he was saying this more and more excitedly, he thought he heard music in the distance that sounded like the fife and drum. Fee, fee, fee. Zoom, 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 zoom. He stopped and listened. The sounds came from the end of the street that crossed the one which led to school, at the end of the little village near the sea. "What can the music be? What a pity I have to go to school. Otherwise," he hesitated, deciding whether to go to school or to listen to the fifes. "Today I shall listen to the fifes, and tomorrow I shall go to school," this naughty boy said finally, shrugging his shoulders. No sooner said than done. He ran, and the farther he ran, the more distinctly he heard the tune of fife and the beating of the big drums. Fee, 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 zoom, zoom, zoom. At last he came to a little square full of people who were gathered around a great building of boards and cloth, painted in all colors of the rainbow. "What is that big building, Pinocchio?" asked a boy who seemed to live there. "Read the poster. It is all written there, and then you'll know." "I'd gladly read it, but I don't know how to read today." Bravo, nincompoop! I'll read it for you. Know then that on that big poster in the fiery red letters is written, 'Great Puppet Show.' Is it long since the play began? It's just beginning now. How much does it cost to go in? 2d." Pinocchio was in such a fever of curiosity that he lost his self-control, and without any shame he said to the little boy, "Will you lend me 2d until tomorrow?" "I'd simply love to," said the boy, laughing at him, "but I can't today." "I shall sell you my jacket for 2d," said the puppet. "What could I do with a jacket of flowered paper? If it should rain and get wet, I couldn't take it off." "Will you buy my shoes?" "They're only good for lighting a fire." "What will you give me for my cap?" "That would be a fine bargain. A cap made of bread. The mice might eat it right off my head." Pinocchio was sitting on horns. He was almost ready to make one more offer, but he had not the courage. He hesitated, but at last he said, "Will you buy this new primer for 2d?" "I'm only a boy, and I do not buy anything from other boys," said the other, having more sense than the puppet. "I'll give you 2d for the primer," cried the old clothes dealer who had overheard the conversation. The book was sold at once, and to think that poor Geppetto stayed at home shivering in his shirt sleeves because he had to sell his coat to buy that primer for his son. That's the end of chapter 9. We'll pick up again tomorrow with chapter 10. Have a great day, everybody.